Hey, welcome back. Today I'm going to show you how to build this elevated dog feeding station. This is our medium. We have a small and a large. The largest for very big dogs, Great Danes, St. Bernards, things like that. This is a great size for your labs, huskies, golden retrievers, that sort of thing. The entire unit is unfinished right now. It's all built and ready to go. But I have not sanded it yet, and obviously I've not painted it yet. I'm waiting on the customer to find out what they want, and then I'll do that. And normally we paint these bases, and we stain the tops and polyurethane the tops. But I have made these with stained bases for people who like a more vintage look, or something to match their maybe their Victorian home or their decor. But anyways, this is a super easy build. It's just a simple shaker style cabinet box. The most difficult thing in here for a beginner is going to be building this drawer. The drawer does slide out, and we've got that in there. Holds about a bag and a half, maybe 2 bags of dog food, small bags of dog food. But apart from building the drawer, everything else is going to be super straightforward and really easy. So if you're a beginning woodworker, this is a great project to maybe take the next step and beef up your skills a little bit. These sell really well. Every time we go to a farmer's market, I don't think there's been one instance where we've gone to a farmer's market and we have not gotten an order for at least one of these. Sometimes we get 3 or 4 at a single fair. So really popular. Not a bad margin on it. And the build is super easy, especially if you can find a way to sort of assembly line it with some help. But anyway, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start by cutting all the panels out. We're going to have 6 panels total. We're going to have the top, the bottom, the back, the front, and the sides. So that's 6 total, so you should end up with 6. I'll put a link to the plans in the description so you can download those. And when you see me cutting right now in the video, I just want you to know that it's going to look like I'm cutting a lot of wood. I am. I'm cutting 3 of these at once so that I can get the best use out of my ply with as little waste as possible. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that and start cutting out our panels. All right, so we're all done cutting up all the pieces for this medium dog feeder. You should have 6 total, okay? You should have 2 sides, a back, a bottom, a front, and a top. Now to put together the box of this unit, we're just gonna need 4 pieces. We're gonna need both sides, we're gonna need the back, and we're gonna need the bottom. And we're gonna put this together using, we're gonna countersink our holes. We're going to use butt joints for this, and just countersink the holes with that countersink bit. And then we're going to put the whole thing together with these 1¼ wood screws that have a square drive on them. I like the square drive screws because they don't strip ever. I have probably gone through 100 buckets of this size, and I have yet to strip a single one, which is wonderful. So let's go ahead and put this together, and once we do, we're going to measure for the drawer, and then we'll cut the drawer. Now, one thing I want to mention is if you do all your cuts perfectly, let me remove this clamp real quick. If you make all your cuts as accurate as possible, then this thing is already kind of going to automatically be square. So we shouldn't have to do a lot of squaring up at the end of this project. So I think I have cut my pieces very accurately here. And so to put this thing together, what we're going to do is we're going to start at one corner. And we're going to make sure that this corner is perfectly flush on both the top and the back side. Okay, the side piece here is going to butt up to this back piece here. And so we're going to perfect this corner here and screw it in. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing to the bottom corner. And then we'll go over here and do it to the opposite side. And we should have a perfectly square box. We'll flip it and then attach the bottom. Now you'll see I'm using a clamp here. This clamp just has a little bit of tension on it. I haven't cranked it down real tight because I want to be able to move this back piece in relation to the side to get it perfectly aligned with the back. So we'll go ahead and just tap these in. And again, we're just going to work with this very top corner. Now you do want to look at the bottom and just make sure that the bottom is close. As long as the bottom is close to flush, then we're good. But for right now, we're only worried about this very top corner right here. And that looks good. Yep, feels good to me. So we'll go ahead and we're going to drill we're going to countersink a hole first. And then we'll go ahead and drive this 1¼ screw into that corner. Now we know this corner is perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and move my box over here so we can see this a little better. And now I want to do the same thing with the this bottom corner here. I want to do the same thing. So I'm going to, I dumped my Coke out. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to just apply a little bit of clamp pressure, not too much, just enough to hold it taut or tight in there. And then we're going to tap this in until we get it flush. And that's flush right there. So I'll go ahead and I'll put another screw here, countersink. And we'll drive these in. Now I ship these across the country, so I like to put a lot of screws in them. UPS and FedEx are notorious for throwing these things around. So I try to build them as strong as I can before I ship them out so they don't break. And normally, actually I forgot to do it here, but normally I will also put a bead of glue between these two joints, which I'll do on the next one, to just help keep this thing together, keep it solid until it finds its home. So let's go ahead, we're going to put 2 more screws in this side. Now these are going to be covered with trim, so these exposed screw heads aren't going to be a big deal because we're just going to cover those up anyway. All right, now I have one side done, and it should be pretty darn square already. We'll go ahead and spin this thing around. And we're going to repeat this process. Okay, we are all done with this box. Now, I'm sure you've noticed that I'm using 3/4 inch ply here. This stuff is super strong. I've seen people that make dog feeders on Etsy and sell some on the web that are made out of 1/2 inch. And I just don't trust 1/2 inch enough to weather time. And so this 3/4 inch is very sturdy. It is heavy, it adds to our shipping costs. But it's a small price to pay for something that you're going to be able to send to a customer that's going to last a very, very long time, and not going to get as beat up as say one built with 1/2 inch. And we're going to do the same thing with the drawer. We're going to make the drawer out of 3/4 inch ply as well. Again, I've seen a lot of people make the drawers out of 1/2 inch ply, but over time, over the years, that's not going to wear quite as nicely as 3/4. So let's go ahead and measure for this drawer. Now, when you're measuring for your drawer, remember I marked the panels earlier. So make sure that you've got the bottom on the ground here, or at the bottom, and the back towards the back, and not the other way around. We're going to use, I believe, 12-inch drawer slides in here. That is correct. These will be 12-inch drawer slides. The drawer slides themselves are 1/2 inch thick, each slide. So you're going to have it a 1/2 inch here and a 1/2 inch here. So whatever our distance is between these 2 points, we're going to have to subtract 1 inch to get the width of our drawer. And I'm getting 20.5 for my width. So we're looking for a drawer that's going to be 19.5 wide. Okay? 19.5 wide. And then on the depth, I like to leave about a 1/2 inch at the back of this drawer, just to be safe. So I'm going to measure that distance. I am at 12 inches. So I'm going to make this drawer 11.5 inches deep. Now finally, I need to know what the drawer height is going to be. Now generally speaking, I'll bring the drawer up about 1/8 to 1/4 inch off the bottom, so there's plenty of clearance. Usually I start with the slides. I'll put the slides in with just an 8-inch shim to raise those slides up a little bit, and then I'll keep that drawer a good 1/8 inch to 1/4 inch off this bottom surface. Now on the height though, this is going to have a 3/4 inch top, and inset into this top are going to be 2 dog bowls, and those dog bowls are 4 inches high. If you subtract out the height of the bowls, which is 3.5 inches, that means that the bowls are going to stick out basically a little under 3 inches underneath this flat surface here. So we can't make our drawer too high, or it's going to hit the bottom of the bowls. All right. So basically, I usually give myself just 4 inches to be safe here. You could probably do 3.5, that would work as well. But I'm going to do 4 inches. I know I'm going to come up 1/8 to 1/4. So I've got 12.5 inches of height here. So I'm just going to come down 4 inches to 8.5 inches, and that's how tall I'm going to make my drawers. And I'll write that down. All right, so let's go cut the pieces for the drawers. Okay, so I've got the pieces for the drawer cut. Now the front and back of the drawer ended up measuring 18 inches by 8.5. And you're going to see why in just a second. It's because the sides are going to butt up to the drawer this way, and we're going to put the screws in this way. And what that's going to do is it's going to make this drawer sturdier. As people pull on it from the front, these screws will be going in this way and will provide that support. If we were to screw from the front, over time, pulling the drawer in, pushing it back in, those screws would probably either work their way loose or strip out the wood. So we're going to put the screws in this way. It is a wonderful idea to test the fit of your drawer before you assemble it. So behind me, I've got the drawer slides that I'm going to be using. These are these ball bearing soft close drawer slides. They're more expensive than the European style drawer slides that you're going to find at Lowe's or whatnot, but they're a lot sturdier, and they'll last a lot longer. So we're just going to go ahead and set these in where they'll go, and they don't need to be the right orientation because we're just doing a fit here. And then you'll put in your sides. And your drawer back. And your drawer front. And as you can see, I have made some boo-boos somewhere. My drawer is not the same height, somehow all the way around, not the same height. So I'm going to have to take these back to the table saw and knock them all down to the 8.5 inches that I wanted them to be. But otherwise, width-wise, I mean, this is as good as it gets. I have no play here in the between the hinges. It's not forced in there. I don't have any play in the back, and that's the kind of fit you want. Being off here 1/8 of an inch, even sometimes as much as or as little as 1/16 of an inch, can make these drawer slides kind of bind up. And it's even worse with the European style, which can actually come off the track, and it's just a nightmare. So you want to make sure you test for fit first, and thank goodness I did, because I've noticed that I've cut these all the wrong size. But let's trim those up and start putting this drawer together. Now, one thing I'll say before we finish putting the drawer together, before we put the drawer together, I've got to cut dados in the bottom of this drawer so that we can use, we're going to use basically a 5mm project panel for the bottom of this drawer. This is such a small drawer that 5mm is going to give it plenty of strength no matter what they put in here. So we'll do that too as soon as I'll even these all off now, and then we'll cut the dados. Okay, so I've got all the drawer pieces cut to the same height. I don't know how I did that. I think maybe the camera got my nerves and I wasn't paying attention. But anyways, all of our drawer sides now are at the same height. I set them to 8 1/4 because that's apparently the mistake I made. But so now we have the fronts, backs, and sides of our drawers, and we're going to use this basically. And I said I was going to use a 5mm project panel, but this is actually going to be a 1/4 inch. It looks like 1/4 inch oak panel is what I have. All this is going to be painted, so it doesn't matter that I'm wearing or that I'm using birch ply with an oak bottom, because it's going to be primed and painted anyway. But what I need to do before I can make the drawers is I need to put a dado into both the sides and the back, so that this project board, or this 1/4 inch, will slide into it. It'll slide into the sides, it'll slide into the front and back, and it'll lock this in place. The dado that I'm going to cut into this, I'm just going to use my standard ply blade for this, because generally I can just do it in 2 passes, which is faster than switching over to my dado set. And what I'm going to do, or what I'm aiming to do, is I'm aiming to go halfway in, or halfway into the depth of this 3/4 inch ply, right? And then I want to go, usually I go up about a 1/2 inch from the bottom, and that's where my dado is going to start. So my dado is going to start there, and it'll be a 1/4 inch, 5mm, whatever that is, right here, and it's going to go along the edge of this. I put a 1/2 inch here because I want that support for this drawer. If you cut this too shallow, say a 1/4 inch, the weight inside this drawer, depending on whether they put dog food in it or dog cans, which can be very heavy if you get enough of them, the stress on the bottom of this plywood is just going to be a little too much. So I'm going to go a 1/2 inch up, and that's where I'm going to start my dado. And I'll do 1 pass, most likely, and then I'll move it 1/8 inch. I'll do another pass, and then I may need just a 3rd pass just to get the right fit. But let's go ahead and set our table saw height and start cutting these dados. Okay, so just so that I can show you, I'm going to put my wood on this side of the blade so that you can see how I set my height for the blade. Now I know people who will they'll get out a woodpecker tool or something else to set the height of this. I'm not quite that anal retentive. I'm not knocking anybody who does it, but I'm just going to take my square. I know that I'm working with 3/4 inch ply here. It's actually just shy of 3/4 inch. So I'm going to set the depth of this cut to right around 3/8, and that should put me halfway. If you see that, should put me halfway into this ply. Okay, and to do that, I'm just going to use my square and lower my blade. Until that square is sitting on there just perfectly. And we'll tighten that up. And just do a quick visual gut check. And that looks pretty darn good. Looks like that's halfway to me. So now that we've done that, what I'm going to do, is I'm going to set my fence to at least 1/2 inch. I'm going to set it at 1/2 inch, but that is completely up to you. I'll set it here at 1/2, and let's go ahead and cut these dados. Okay, so I've got a nice I've got my first dado cut here, and you can see that it's a good, basically ½ inch up. It's really actually about 3/8 because of the width of the blade. But this is generally where I like to put this. This is enough wood here to provide some pretty good support. But this channel is not nearly wide enough to accept our project board or our 1/4 inch oak ply that we're going to use for the bottom of this. So we're going to have to move our fence over 1/8 of an inch, which is the thickness of my blade here. We're going to move it over 1/8 of an inch and cut a second notch or dado in this board. Now, one thing I do want to say is, if you can see this blade, the blade I'm using has square tips on it, square chisels. On some blades you'll see, on some rip blades and such, you'll see offsets between each blade. One blade will be tilted this way, the next blade will be tilted this way. You don't want that, because what that's going to do is, that's in addition to the dado that this cuts, at the very bottom of the dado you're going to have this little triangular peak, and you don't want that. So you always want to make sure you're using a flat tipped blade here. Okay, so let's move the fence over 1/4 of an inch, or I'm sorry, 1/8 of an inch, and we'll cut a second channel. Okay, so we made our second pass. We've got a nice, basically what is a 1/4 inch dado here. It's a little bigger than a 1/4 of an inch. That's perfectly fine. All we want to do is we want to make sure that our project board, this thin 1/4 inch board, is going to slip into that dado and be pretty snug, and it is. That little bit of wiggle room isn't going to hurt anything, and it'll allow for any of the wood to swell if it does, but not going to be a problem. So we've got this done. We've got all of them dadoed. Now we just have to cut the bottom of the drawer out of this project panel, and we can start putting the drawer together. All right, so the number I came up with for this drawer bottom was 18 5/8 by 10 3/4, and we're going to see if I got it right. All right, so far so good. And hot damn, you'd think I have done this before. We're good. We're good. We got a good fit, and we can go ahead and assemble this drawer. Okay, so now we're going to put this drawer together. I'm going to take both sides here and just put a bead of glue on each end. Remember that the sides are going to butt up against our ends here. So we'll just put a bead of glue there. Okay, we'll do the same with the other side. And use your patented glue spreader to get that all worked around. And now we'll go ahead and assemble this piece. So we'll drop the drawer bottom in here. We'll drop the other side over there. Add our sides. And voila. Again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put a clamp on this. Just a little bit of tension. And we're going to perfect one corner at a time. All right, so the drawer is all put together. I want to just one more time test this for fit, just to make sure that we're still good. And as you can see, that guy fits like a glove. There is no side-to-side movement there at all. It's not snugging up the drawer slides here. So this is going to pull out and push back in super easy, really smooth, and that's what I like to see. All right, so we've got the thing built. The drawer slides are not attached. The drawer is not attached, and I like to do that before I continue. I'll attach the drawer slides and then I'll attach the drawer slides to the drawer, and then we'll attach the front, which is another 3/4 inch piece of ply. Now I know that people are going to comment, hey, you don't have to do it that way. You know, you could just use the drawer front instead of having a double thickness of 3/4 ply here. I know I'm going to get those comments. I do it because that is how I've been doing it forever. To do it the other way, using pocket holes or any other sort of joinery, it just takes too much time. This is much faster for me, and I get a more accurate front on the dog feeder. And that's important because this dog feeder, as it comes out and goes back in, you want it to have a certain amount of clearance on the bottom, just in case somebody puts this on tile that's uneven, or they put it on carpet that's a little thicker. You want that bottom of that front to be a bit off the ground, so it'll clear the carpet or clear the tile that it's on. And I've just found that doing it this way allows me to put shims in place and align everything perfectly, so that I can have that perfect gap at the bottom that'll allow that drawer to slide no matter what sort of flooring they put this on. So let's go ahead and put in these drawer slides. Now, like I said, we're going to be using these heavy-duty drawer slides. These are your kind of not soft close, but they're a very soft movement. And they're heavy-duty. They've got plenty of room for screws on both sides. Another reason that I picked these is because I can put a lot of screws. If this thing is going to fail somewhere, either in shipping or over the years, it's going to fail here on these drawer slides. After pulling the drawer out and pushing the drawer back in, and the weight that's bearing down on it. So that's one reason that I use 3/4 inch ply for the drawer, and I use these drawer slides because this thicker material plus all these places I can screw in will help make sure that this thing lasts a long time and it stands up to the kind of abuse that it's going to get every single day, at least once, twice a day, being pulled out, being pushed back in. You know, kids pulling out, pushing, you know, that'll happen 400 times a day. If you have kids, you know what I'm talking about. But we need it to stand up, and that's why I love these slides. You can go with the European slides, but I don't recommend it. It's usually a disaster, even in shipping or moving. So we're going to use these. Now, to get these drawer slides apart, what you're going to do is you're going to pull them out just until, yeah, there we go. You're going to pull them out just until you see this kind of lever here. Okay, here's your lever right there. I don't know if you can see that, but you see that lever? And you're going to push this lever down and just pull it out, just like so. Okay, just like that. And we're going to do that with that slide. And we're going to do the same thing with this slide. And just pull it out, just like so. This is the part, the bigger part will go against on the frame of the dog feeder. This smaller part is going to go on the drawer. Now, I had mentioned before that that I usually offset these an eighth of an inch up, but that's a lie. The European hinges, I usually offset eighth of an inch up. These I do not. These I just put in flat against the bottom of the feeder, and then I'll install the rails flat or flush with the bottom of the drawer. And because these are already, you can see that one fits inside the other, and you can see that because of that, we've already got a good 3/8 of an inch or so. Yeah, I mean a ½ inch basically. We got a ½ inch of clearance from the very bottom of the drawer to the bottom of the feeder box itself. So it's going to take care of that for us. So we're just going to install these flat against the bottom of this dog feeder. So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so we're ready to install these slides. Now you want to make sure all these slides are pretty similar no matter where you get them. Usually got a rubber bumper at the back, and it is the extending part will be smaller that goes out the front. So what we want to do is we're going to place this inside here, okay? But we want to make sure that the drawer slide is not even with the back, but instead even with the front. And the reason for that is at the very end of this drawer slide, there is a catch. And you can feel it as you push in the drawer. It'll make a click, and it'll hold that drawer in. It's just there as kind of a catch. So we want to make sure that this is flush with the front of the feeder here. And once it is, again, we're just flat against the bottom of the feeder. We can go ahead and screw this in. And there we have it. Now you'll notice that I put 5 screws in this, or 6. Let me see. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've got 6 screws in this drawer slide holding it to the side of the dog feeder. That is going to last a long, long time. It's just the difference between, I mean, not even a cent, a couple cents worth of a screw. To put it in here to make sure that you don't get a complaint from a customer at some point in the future that your dog feeder just didn't hold up, or the drawer slides gave out over a year's time. So make sure you utilize all those holes. That is not going anywhere. That is going to be sturdy for a very long time. Now we'll go ahead and do the same thing to the other side, and we'll be ready to attach the rails to the bottom of the drawer. All right, now I've got both of the drawer slide frames attached to the frame of the dog feeder, and so let's go ahead and put the rails onto the drawer itself. Now the channel on these drawer slides will point out. So this is a U-shaped channel that will point outwards. You'll have a tab at the front of this. This is the front of the drawer. The other one is open, as you can see here, so that you can slide it onto the ball bearings. The closed end is the front of your drawer, and you want that to come flush with the front of your drawer box. So we'll go ahead and put those in. All right, we've got those in. We did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws in this side. We're going to do the same thing here. Now remember, this is no longer our front. Now this is our front because we turned it around. So the frame of this, or the closed end of this drawer slide is going to go here. Again, we're going to make it flush with the front of the drawer box. And go ahead and screw that in. All right, now that we've got the drawer rails on both sides of this drawer, let's go ahead and see how it fits. Now when you're using these ball bearing drawer slides, to get them in the first time is a bit of a chore. You've got to really push these suckers in the first time around. So don't be shocked that you've got to give it a lot of force. Once you have properly seated the drawer slides or the drawer rails into the slide frames, then you can pull it out. That first pull is a tough one, but after that the drawer moves pretty easily, and you'll get a drawer that moves quite smoothly. And that's that. Okay, so I've got the front cut already. That was part of our original cut. Everything's put together. The drawer slides are in, the drawer's in. So before I said that I want to have a good 1/4 of an inch on the bottom of the drawer. That'll clear any imperfections on a tile floor. It'll make it easier to open if this is going to be on carpet. So we want to make sure that we do have that clearance at the bottom of the drawer front. Okay, so that's all I've got here. Is I've got these 1/4 inch plywood shims that I'm just going to sit here right in front. Now the front goes on, obviously on the front. This front I cut a little bit short. I'm going to have to edit the plans because generally when I cut these I like about a 3/8 inch overhang here, a 3/8 inch overhang here. But for this build it's not really going to matter because we're going to trim this whole thing out anyway, and you're not going to see it. It's just a matter of aesthetics. So what I'm going to do to attach the drawer to the drawer front, because I don't think I can get my camera in here to get a good picture of it, is I'm going to drill 4 holes through the drawer and basically pre-drill countersink holes 4, and then screw the drawer into the front from the back, from the inside of the drawer, and that'll hold this in place, and everything will be exactly where I want it. All right, so I am done putting the front on this dog feeder, and you'll see that I have a nice 1/4 inch gap here at the top. That'll clear the top of the feeder that we're going to put on, and I've got a nice 1/4 inch of a gap here at the bottom, and the drawer slides beautifully. Okay, there you go. See that from the side. All right. Now what we're going to work on is we're going to work on trimming this out. And we're going to trim this with 2.5 inch wide by 3/4 thick poplar. But in order to do that, I'm going to have to mill down some of the longer pieces, bigger pieces of poplar that I have. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so unfortunately my battery died and I didn't notice while I was cutting this poplar on my miter saw. But basically, this is just a 10.5 inch by 8 foot stick of poplar, 4/4 or just under 4/4. And so I've cut this down into the pieces that I know that I'm going to need to make this trim. And I'll show you how that goes together in a moment. But before we do that, these boards are still a little thick, so I'm going to plane them down to 3/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to rip them at 2.5 inches each, and that will be basically all of our trim for this medium dog feeder. So let's go ahead and do that and enjoy the planing. Okay, so I've got all of my poplar planed down to 3/4 of an inch, which is where I want it. And we're going to do a simple shaker style on this dog feeder. So I'm going to rip these into 2.5 inch strips that we're going to use for that trim. Now, in the past, I have used 3/4 inch ply to make the trim, and we've just filled the edges. But that is so time consuming that the difference in cost between doing it with ply and doing it with poplar, it didn't justify sticking with the plywood method. This is so much faster, so much easier to do it this way. But if you're on a budget and you're trying to save money, you can do this with ply. Just cut up strips of your 3/4 ply, use some spackle or whatever your preferred fill is, to fill in the edges of the ply so those lines of the layers don't show through. But even for this project, using post-COVID prices or current COVID prices on this poplar, which is about $3.59 a board foot, we're only looking at about 13 bucks worth of poplar to make this trim. So it's not breaking the bank. We add that to roughly, ply is going for about anywhere $60, $80 a sheet right now. So really, I mean, we're talking about the difference between the ply and the poplar is probably less than $10 difference on this, and the time savings is huge. This, I just planed it. I can now rip it and I can start putting it on. Whereas before with the plywood, I'd have to cut it, and then I'd have to fill it, and I'd have to wait for it to dry, and then I'd have to sand it, and that's just a lot more time invested into this project for that small piece of it. So the $10 difference is worth it for me, but you do have that option if you're trying to save some money. So let's go to the table saw and just rip these into 2.5 inch strips. All right, so all of our trim pieces are cut, and what I've got here is I've got some extras just because of the width of the poplar board that I used, but that's okay. I'll use this on another dog feeder probably later today. We make a lot of them. But what you're going to need is you're going to need two of these 23 inch long pieces, 23 inches by 2.5 inches. That should put you roughly where you need to be for the basically what are going to be the rails on the front of that shaker style dog feeder. And then for the stiles, we're going to need the stiles which will go on the left, right, and front of the feeder. We're going to need 6 total stiles for that. So we've got 6 of the 2.5 inch by, I believe, 14 inches for the stiles. Again, I cut those a little bit long just so I have room to play with. And then you'll do the rails on the left and right sides, which are going to be considerably shorter, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 or 9 inches. But I've cut, and you're going to need several of those, but I've cut 4, 2 for the left, 2 for the right, for the stiles on that. So in total, we've got basically 2 23s, 6 14s, and 4 10s. And so we'll go ahead and start putting the trim on this. I highly suggest that you glue the trim on as well as using your brad nailer or whatever fastener you like to use, especially if you're going to make these to ship across the country. We've had UPS and FedEx really do quite a number, even with all the packing and stuff that we put around them. You know, a good drop may not chip the paint, but it could dislodge one of the trim pieces if they're not glued on. So I highly suggest that you glue these on. Now in shaker style, if you're not familiar with shaker style is really just very, very plain rectangular trim on usually a flat panel. The pieces that run north and south or up and down, these are called your stiles, and the pieces of trim that run left and right are normally called your rails. Now your stiles, you want your stiles to go the full height of your project. That is, you want the stiles to butt up this way against the rails on your shaker style. Okay, you don't want it the other way around. This would be considered incorrect and ugly. You want your stiles to go all the way up and down that panel, be it a shaker style door or whatever. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to keep our stiles the full height of the project, and then we're going to cut our rails to fit in between the stiles. Okay, I have cut this to fit perfectly here on the side. So we're just going to apply a little bit of glue. Use your trusty glue spreader. This is really going to help to make sure that these things don't come off in shipping or when they're dragged across the floor and so forth. Inside my brad nailer, I've got 1 1/4 inch. I believe they are 23, no, they're 18 gauge brad nails. Again, 1 1/4 inch. They're not going to go in far, so I don't have to worry about them poking through the other side. There's a full 1/4 inch, and we're not driving that much pressure. So what I'll go ahead and do is bring this around so I can see it. And I just want to make sure that this trim is flush in all directions. And I can start up here like we did when we assembled the thing. I can start with one perfect corner and just brad nail that in. Now I can come to the bottom corner and make sure it's flush and secure that one in. And we'll give it a few more brad nails just to hold it in place until the glue dries. Now in the front, we're going to do something, we have to make sure that we've got good alignment. Now one thing I want is with this trim attached to the drawer, right? I want the drawer to basically close and butt up against this trim. I don't want it the other way around. I don't want this drawer to try and fit inside this trim because it'll catch, and if I give it some spacing so that it doesn't catch it, well then you're going to have this kind of ugly gap around the front, and I don't want that. So what I want is I want to align these where they're going to basically come together like so, so that when you close the drawer, this trim is going to butt up perfectly with this trim. Okay, so I'll need both of these pieces in order to align this correctly so that it does that and we don't have any ugly gaps between these two pieces of trim. So here I'm just going to do again same thing I did on the back. I'm going to mark the side, or I'm going to mark the back side of this and trim it on the miter saw. All right, there we go. So go ahead again, we're going to glue this up. Just a nice thin coat of glue there. It doesn't have to be a whole lot. Remember, this is ply, so really, I mean, this glue is just going to stick to that veneer anyway. Since it's not a solid piece of wood. Now, in order to put this in the correct position, I want to first make sure that I have my face trim, eventually what's going to be my face trim, here flush up against the front of my drawer. And I'm just going to hold that there. I'm going to hold that there, and then I'm going to use this. I'm going to use that to position this trim perfectly, which is right there. Tack it in with a brad nail, and same thing on the bottom. I'll make sure it's flush. You see, I can move this back and forth a bit. Going to make sure that it's flush with the drawer front. Tack that in place, and a couple more brad nails just to keep that secure until the glue dries. Now that that's done, I can take some of my shorter pieces, and these are these 10-inch pieces I cut. Looks like I probably didn't need to cut 10, I could have cut them 9, but that's okay. I'm just going to go ahead and mark where this needs to be cut, and I'll take this to the miter saw. Okay, now there you have, this side panel is done. We've got a few little gaps here and there, but we're going to just spackle those anyway before we paint, so they're not going to be visible. We'll spackle them and sand them. But now we've got this side done. Now, so the next thing we need to do is we need to do the front of the drawer to where it connects to here. And remember that on the bottom of the drawer, we've got a 1/4 inch basically relief there, so that this thing can move over tile and carpet. So you don't want this trim to go all the way down to your workbench. You want to bring it up that 1/4 inch to match with the drawer front, and then we'll mark it and we'll cut this on the miter saw. Okay, now remember I said that I generally like to have some overlap here on that front, but I don't have it this time, and that's okay. It's going to work just fine anyway. But what we're going to do is we're going to glue now this front stile to the front of the drawer, and then brad nail that in as well. Now remember that we've got that 1/4 inch reveal at the bottom, so we're going to just bring this up until it matches this height here. And again, we're trying to make a perfect corner here. You want this flush from the top. You also want it flush on the side. And that feels good. One brad nail to hold it in place. And then we can do the same thing to the bottom. Just make sure that we've got everything flush. And we'll brad nail this in place. again with a couple more to finish it off. All right, we got one style done, and you can see now how that works, right? We pull the drawer out, and we got this nice piece of trim that's going to keep from us having a gap on the front side, and from the side it's going to be sealed up really nicely, and there's not going to be a sightly gap there either, which is what we want. Here's my shims from before. I'm just going to use those again here because I don't want to get in the way of the camera. But I'll use those shims to space that 1/4 inch away from the bottom of my workbench. And we'll just take these and brad nail them. Again, checking for any glue, squeeze out. And we'll repeat on the top. Okay, so in the beginning of putting this this trim on, I said I'd like to start from the back. Right, and move my way forward, and I promise you I make like 25 of these a week, but I guess because I'm on camera and not really paying as much attention as I should, what I did is when I installed this poplar here on this side, I made it flush with this trim here, but when I got over to this side, I wasn't paying attention, and I made it flush with the drawer front. So I lost a good 1/4 inch in elevation between the two, and now everything doesn't line up. And just a reminder to myself why I always start from the back on each side. Start from the back here, I start from the back here, and then generally speaking, I'll do the front last. But I'm distracted during this video, so I've got to redo this. Luckily, it's not the end of the world. I was able to get this off before the glue dried. So we're just going to go ahead and pull the brad nails out of this, and we'll reposition the trim. Okay, so crisis averted, and actually having to fix it, I realized what I did wrong. Again, I'm trying to watch the battery on the camera and the memory card on the camera while I'm doing this, and so I'm not paying attention as closely as I usually do. And what I did wrong is that I took this style here and I matched the height of the trim on the right side, which is not what I want to do, because remember that there is a 1/4 inch, you can do an 1/8, but I did a 1/4. There's a 1/4 inch relief here underneath the tabletop that's going to go on top of this dog feeder, and I did not account for that. I went straight up to the side of the edge trim, or the trim here, and I shouldn't have. Okay, but that's a super easy fix. I've got the style on this side and it is correct. This one's just a little bit long. It doesn't matter. I'll remove the drawer and I'll trim this off with the table saw, and you'll never know the difference. Again, that's why I like to start from the back all the time. I'll do the left, I'll do the right, and then I'll do the front. Because I'm not paying attention, I did it backwards today, and as you can see, I'm paying the price. All right, again, I'm just going to take this side trim, I'm going to butt it up all the way to the trim on the drawer front, okay? And make sure that that's even and flush. We'll go ahead and brad nail that in until the glue dries. And there you have it. It is starting to come together. It's starting to actually look like a piece of furniture. I'm going to go ahead and, I'm not going to video it, but I'm going to go ahead and just take this tab off here, this extra space with the table saw. All right, we're done with that part. So we've got all our trim on. It looks nice. It's starting to look like a piece of furniture. The next step I want to do is I want to cut the top, and I have the top here. Okay, this top is going to go on top of this feeder like so. Okay, and in the top of this feeder, we're going to cut 2 holes for dog bowls, and then we'll put a drawer pull on the front, and we'll be ready to finish. Now, when it comes to drilling holes for the dog bowls, you'll have to figure out how to do that with the tools you've got available and the size of bowls you have available and whatnot. You can do this with a jigsaw. You could probably do this with a scroll saw if you've got a big enough scroll saw. You could certainly do this with a router if you had some sort of jig. I wouldn't suggest doing it freehand. I'm not going to go any of those routes though, because I have a tool at my disposal that can save me that trouble. I have a CNC and that CNC is already programmed for this top because we cut so many of them that all I have to do is drop this on the CNC, start the CNC, and it'll do the rest while I work on something else. So let's go ahead and drop this on the CNC and we'll cut out these circles. Okay, so I've got my top off the CNC. You may notice that the bowls are a little further forward here and a little farther away from this edge. That's on purpose. This is actually a custom order, and it's going to have a backsplash and that sort of thing. So I had to scoot the bowls forward just a little bit to even everything out. But for yours, you're going to want to make sure that they're just centered horizontally and vertically on this. Now, we're almost done. The only thing that's left to do is I have this really ugly plywood edge all the way around the top, and I don't want our customers to see that because we stain these tops. The entire base of the dog feeder is white, but on this one we stain the tops. So I want to do something about this edge, and what I'm going to do is edge banding. And you can find edge banding at Lowe's, Home Depot, any one of those big box stores. At Lowe's, I'll tell you, it's in the lumber section where they have the dowels. Usually it's right there with the dowels and the glued up panels and that sort of thing. But let's go ahead and edge band this. It's super easy. We're just going to cut strips to the length of each side and then iron them on. It's got a heat activated glue on it already. They're pre-glued. So all we have to do is heat it up and iron it on and then trim off the edges. So let's do that. All right, so here's the edge banding I was talking about. Really, it's just a very thin veneer or thin strip of birch. And on the other side, it's pre-glued with a heat-activated glue. So what we're going to do, and this is a big roll. You don't have to buy a roll this big. This roll actually comes about that big. But at Lowe's or Home Depot, they have these in a smaller size for your project. But all we're going to do is we're going to cut strips of these and glue it to the side of this of the top, so that we have that finished edge. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now when you're doing this, you'll save yourself some time and headache if you flush one side of this edge banding to your workpiece and then leave the overhang on the other side. That way you don't have to trim both sides. I've got the iron on the hottest setting it'll go, and I'm just going to slowly move down the piece and just feeling with my thumb to make sure that this edge banding is flush on this side. That way I don't have to trim it. I just, at the worst, I'll have to just give it a light sand to take that edge off. We're going to go through here, we're going to heat this all the way down. And if it moves on you, that's okay. Just reheat it and put it back into position and get it nice and warm. And then take a block and just straight down, just run the block along the edge of the edge banding to really squeeze that glue into all the little cracks in there. And then all we have to do is basically take a pair of scissors, and we're going to line up the sharp edge of the scissors right to the edge of the edge banding, and we could just snip that off like so. Okay? Now we're ready to, now before I go on to the next piece, I'd like to make sure that there's not a lip here, which there is right now, and there's also a small lip on the other side. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a little sandpaper, and I'm going to sand down so they don't peel the edge banding off. I'll do the same thing on this side. Okay. And there you have it. There's your edge banding there. I don't know if you can see it. There's got an overhang here on this side. We're flush on this side. You can trim this off with a utility knife. You can actually, if you split the difference, you can actually sand this off. I don't know that I was trying to sand such a big tab off like this, but it pays to get a little tool like this, which is an edge band trimmer specifically made for doing this. And all you're going to do is just run this trimmer up the edge of it, like so, and hold it at it's a very slight angle you'll hold it at. You don't want to go too aggressive on the angle, because you will actually cut into the veneer of the ply. So keep it very shallow, and you see we have a nice edge band there. Got a little lip right here that I can knock down with the trimmer. And then to get this perfect, I'm just going to get a piece of really fine sandpaper. Here's a scrap from my orbital sander, and I'll just sand it down flush. And you want to make sure that you really do sand all the way flush, because if you look closely, you'll see that you're going to burn through. You'll take off the edge banding, and then just right before you're perfectly flush, you're going to see like a layer of glue. And so you're going to keep sanding until that layer of glue is gone as well. You don't want that glue on there because that glue is going to interfere with your I got a high spot there. I'll take a little more aggressive sandpaper to that one. All right. A little bit of an edge down here. And perfect. Now, one thing when you're sanding this edge banding, you want to make sure that you have your sanding block tilted up just slightly. This is obviously over exaggerated, but you don't want to be flat on the ply. You want to be just up from the ply a little bit. And the reason is the veneer on some of this ply, whether it's China birch or Baltic birch, they've got different thicknesses of veneers. The China birch is really thin. You can burn through this or sand through this veneer really fast. And I mean really fast. So you want to just keep a little angle on that. We're going to come back, we're going to go to this side, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to just sand this edge. Make sure it's smooth, and it is. Now I already edge banded this other side. I forgot to hit play or record on the camera, so this one's already done. But I'll go ahead, same thing. I'm going to sand downwards with my sanding block till it's flush, which is good. It's good there. And then I'm going to take my trimmer and we're going to trim off this excess. You want to check the underside of your trimmer. Pretty often the glue will accumulate there, and it'll make it a lot harder for you to trim this edge banding off. So that's trimmed. Again, just a light sand. Don't forget to keep that at a very, very shallow angle so you don't sand into the ply. Do that on the other side. And we're done. There you have it. So we've got some very nice, clean edges on this ply. The reality is from a distance, unless you got really, really close to look at this, you'd never know that this was ply. Okay. So we've got our cabinet, our base cabinet built, and we've got the drawer in and operational. We've also got our top, which now has edge banding and looks great. So really all this is going to do is goes on top like this. I like to leave like a 3/4 inch to a 1 inch overhang all around the feeder. And then all you're going to do, you just drop the bolt in, And voila, you are done. You have a raised dog feeder. The only steps left to do from here is to finish it. And that'll mean basically taking spackle and filling all your cracks, all your brad nail holes, and then giving it a good sand, painting it, and then of course you're going to put whatever hardware, whatever pull hardware you want to put on the front, whether that's a 2.75 on center, 3-inch on center, 3.5-inch on center, whatever it is. Very easy to install. If I remember to, I'll post a video on how to install this drawer pull. Pretty straightforward. You just measure basically the height here, cut it in half, measure the width here, cut that in half, and then go equal distance from that center to drill your holes. And that's really it. I hope you enjoyed this build. In terms of cost, well, you're looking at probably, right now wood is ridiculously expensive. Sheets of plywood are running, depending on where you get it, anywhere from $65 to $87, I believe I saw yesterday at the big box store. Their blonde wood ply, which is either poplar faced or some other whitewood faced ply, $87, $88 for a single sheet. This medium dog feeder uses about 3/4 of a sheet. So assuming you have something you can do with the remainder of that plywood, then I guess in plywood you're probably looking at about $60 in the plywood. The drawer slides are a little pricey at the big box stores. They'll probably cost you somewhere along the lines of $10 a pair, so you're at $70. The bowls, depending on where you can get them at a ton of places. Unfortunately, they're all different sizes, but we get bowls from Harbor Freight, not Harbor Freight, cancel that. We get bowls from Tractor Supply. You can also get them at Academy Sports. They have them in the pet section. PetSmart, of course, has something like this. I believe Walmart has stainless steel bowls like this. Or you can go on Amazon and get it on Amazon. These we found at a local food or local feed store, and they had this paw print stamped in the side of it, which Grace really liked. So we picked up those, and you just have to make sure that you cut out the right size hole. But in bowls, you're looking at probably another $10 to $15, so you're $70, $85 for this, and then the edge banding is negligible. Maybe $1 there, and then whatever hardware you put on the front, another $5. So where are we at? We're at 60, 70, 85, $90. And then you got to paint it and stain it polyurethane the top to make sure that it doesn't get wet, or the wood doesn't get wet and expand, because plywood will do that. So it's got to be sealed very well. And we'll provide a picture of this, or I'll provide a picture of this when it's all painted and stained and sealed up. But other than that, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at about $95. And if you're a seasoned woodworker, you can probably build this in just a few hours. If you're new to woodworking, this is probably something that's going to take you a better part of a day to do. But it's fun. It's fun for the dogs, and these are really good sellers at farmers markets and things like that. If you have any questions, make sure to post them in the comments below. And till next time.